Hi, I'm Diane Hendricks and welcome to Fresh to Frozen and Back. This show is going to make your life easier. It's all about preparing delicious and simple meals, freezing the leftovers properly, and then bringing them back to life for your family, and you're going to love it. TV dinners. Do you remember those magical meals that you pulled out of the freezer and you could get dinner on the table in minutes? It was really easy, but not so good for you. This show is going to teach you all about how to make your own TV dinners and your own frozen foods that you can feel good about eating and feeding your family. Freezing is one of the simplest ways to store and preserve food. It saves time, work, and money. Today is all about crock pots. I love crock pots. It's the easiest way to get a meal on the table when you have a super busy day. You can throw everything in the pot in the morning, and when you get home from work, it's ready to go. Make a little salad, toss some vegetables together, and you've got yourself a meal. So in this episode, we are going to be making chili and pozole, which I'll tell you about later. So let's get started with the chili. Okay, I put some really cool and unique ingredients into chili. My family loves it. I have 2 boys and a big husband who used to be a judo champion, and they love it. It's a super simple way to get a really hearty meal on the table. Okay, so what we have here is we have some ground turkey, and we're gonna crank up the heat a little bit in a medium to large skillet. Add a little bit of olive oil. And you don't need to use a lot of olive oil in cooking because once the oil hits the pan, it gets more liquid. Most people cook with way too much olive oil. And just remember, a tablespoon of olive oil has 120 calories. So one time, just measure it into a tablespoon and you'll see just how much oil you're using. You only need 500 less calories a day to lose a pound a week. So cutting back on some olive oil can really help you there. So, okay, so let me crank this up. I have it on like a medium high, and we're gonna add, I'm using turkey today. You can use beef, you can use lamb, you can use chicken, mushrooms, which I'll show you in another episode when I make a vegetarian lasagna that is really delicious. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna cook this, breaking up with the back. I like to use one of these flat wooden spatulas to break it into smaller pieces because you don't want really big chunks, but you also don't want little tiny pieces. So you want them to be like the size of like maybe a pea, a little bit larger than a pea. So we're gonna let this cook up. And actually, while that's cooking, I'm gonna go over to the crock pot and start adding the ingredients. This is the only thing you have to cook on top of the stove for this entire dish. Everything else goes in all together. Okay, so let's start with a bowl here. Okay, so in this bowl, I'm gonna put some diced onion. I like Vidalia onion. They have like a little sweetness to them. It's really yummy. And some celery, some diced celery. This is called multitasking. This is the only thing you're gonna have to stir and cook at the same time. So let's get this nice and cooked up. Okay, so now we're gonna add some diced red bell pepper. If you don't have red bell pepper, use yellow or green, it doesn't matter, any type of pepper you like. A little jalapeno, I like a lot because I like a lot of heat, but you can add it or don't add it. And then we're gonna add some spices. We've got some ground cumin, oregano, ground oregano. You can use fresh oregano if you'd like. You're just gonna need to use 3 times more fresh than you would the dried. Then we have chili powder. This is really one of the key ingredients. We've got some cocoa powder, unsweetened. It adds this depth of flavor that you are gonna be shocked with. Oh my gosh, it smells so good already. A little balsamic vinegar. That adds another nice little kick, a deep kick. A little garlic. And then we're going to add some tomato paste. I love tomato paste. When I make dishes, sometimes my friends are like, are you gonna use that much tomato paste? And I'm like, yeah, because it really makes a big difference. And all natural peanut butter. If you have a peanut allergy or you don't like peanut butter, you can use sunflower butter, but it really, really makes a nice difference in this dish. Okay, then we're just gonna stir this all up. And what I'm doing now, I want to incorporate the peanut butter and the tomato paste into the mixture. You're gonna have to stir this during like every hour or so, just to stir and smash down that peanut butter and that tomato paste so it gets in there. Oh, it smells amazing already. Let's stir this guy up. And you know, it's gonna be cooking. It's gonna be cooking in the crock pot, so you want to cook this up first, but it doesn't have to be 100%. And see how it's sticking together? I want to break it up. Oh my gosh. So this is almost ready to go in. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this mixture and we're gonna put it in the crock pot. Okay, so now the insert of the crock pot you can remove. You don't have to like move everything over to the crock pot. Take the insert of the crock pot to where you want to be. So we're going to take this amazing mixture and pour it into the crock pot. Oh my gosh, it smells so good. Get it all out. Perfect. Okay. And now we're going to add some diced tomatoes. You can use canned diced tomatoes. You can use fresh tomatoes and dice them. But you want those chunks of tomatoes in there. We're gonna add some kidney beans. If you don't wanna use kidney beans, you don't have to use them. You can use garbanzo beans, you can use pinto beans, anything that you like, even black beans. You can make a delicious black bean chili. Now we're gonna add a little bit of beer. You can use a porter or a stout, which is a deep, deep, rich beer, or this, which is a lager, that's quite fine. It's gonna give it another depth of flavor. A fresh pinch of black pepper and a hit of salt. And now we're gonna add this meat to the pot. So this meat goes directly in. Oh my gosh, so good. And then what we're gonna do is we're just gonna stir all this up. And that's as simple as that. After this is gonna go in the crock pot for about 4 to 5 hours, and all those flavors are gonna get all mixed up together and give you this delicious, quick meal that you can get on the table in a flash. After about 2 hours, we're gonna stir in some cilantro, but first we're gonna get all these flavors together. So you just pop them on your crock pot. I love chili. It's one of our family's favorites. In addition to freezing great, it's absolutely delicious, and it's also very, very hearty. We consider it a comfort food, but I like year-round comfort. So I'll have chili in the middle of the summer. And this recipe kind of evolved from all the different types of chili I've had in all of my travels. So the addition of the peanut butter and the cocoa powder just came from experiencing and experimenting with different types of recipes, but this is perfected and it is absolutely delicious and you're gonna love it. And now you're just gonna pop the lid on and you're gonna let that cook on low for 4 to 5 hours. At about 2 hour mark, you're gonna add the cilantro and then you're just gonna stir it up and then it'll be done before you know it, and you can get dinner on the table in a flash. So now I'm gonna show you what to do to freeze it and then how to defrost it and have it at another time. Okay, so we've been about 2 hours. We're gonna stir in the cilantro. And you can add as much cilantro as you like. And you know, a lot of people don't like cilantro, so if you don't wanna add the cilantro, don't add it. My mother hates cilantro, so when I put cilantro in anything, she knows it immediately. And there's actually like a receptor on your tongue that for some people, cilantro tastes like soap or dirt. Can you believe that? Not for me, I can't have enough of it, but the people who don't like it, it's a full-on love-hate relationship, and I'm sure you can relate to that. So the cilantro is all stirred in, And then we're just gonna put the lid back on, let it cook for another hour, and then I'm gonna show you how to freeze it. Okay, so this is done. And it smells amazing. Now you can serve this to your family right now or freeze it. And all you have to do is take the chili and put it in a freezer safe container. I love these containers. They're nice and have a nice seal, and you're gonna wanna leave a little bit of room on the top for any type of expansion when it goes into the freezer. So you fill it up almost to the top. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Okay, and then you just stick a lid on it. I like to put a piece of Scotch tape across the top, and then I take a Sharpie marker and I just write what it is and the date that I made it. And the reason I use the Scotch tape is because you can tear that off and then you can wash this and reuse this, which is great. So you take this, you just stick it right in your freezer, labeled and dated. Now, once it's in your freezer, here, we're taking this out. This one I had in the freezer already, and now I'm gonna show you how to get it out because it's kind of packed tight in here. So all you do is you go over to the sink and you run a little bit of warm water. It's got to get nice and warm, and what's going to happen, and you'll see the bottom separate. So you're just going to put it upside down, and you can actually see the bottom start to separate. This water's not hot enough yet, but as it gets hot, you'll see it separate, and it breaks away from the, it just breaks away from the bottom, and then you can plop it into a pot. So there, the water's getting hot enough. That's it. And I can feel it breaking away from the bottom. There we go. So now it's all loosened up. Then you just get a pan, upside down, it pops right out. Lay it on its side, cover it, turn it on low, stir it every now and then, and you have an amazing meal right on the table that you made days, weeks, or even a month ago. Okay, so the chili's done. It smells and looks amazing. And the garnish is simple, just a little bit of shredded cheese, if you like. You don't have to add any. And just a hit of cilantro. And you can even squeeze a little bit of lime juice on it, and it's absolutely delicious. Now, just a quick recap. You took your beef or your chicken or your vegetables and you cooked it on top of the stove. You added all the ingredients into the crock pot, add the cooked beef, stir it up, stick it in the crock pot for 2 or 3 hours, add the cilantro, stir it up, another hour or so, and you're done. And it is wonderful. Let's try it. It's so rich. The cocoa powder and the peanut butter really shine, and that tomato paste just really takes it to a whole nother level. Next recipe in the crock pot is a traditional Mexican soup called pozole. Okay, so the next crock pot dish is a traditional Mexican soup called pozole. The first time I had pozole was in Mexico with my husband many years ago. I'm not gonna tell you how many, but I was hooked from the start. The flavors are incredible, and it's super simple to make. Pozole is traditionally served in Mexico on Christmas Eve, and sometimes throughout the year in many parts of the country, it's served on Thursdays and Saturdays. I'm not sure why those particular days, but that's just a little tidbit of information on that. Again, it's super simple, and it's made with pork. If you don't want to use pork, use anything you like. You can use chicken, you can use turkey, you can use vegetables. Whenever you're cooking what I call on top of the stove, use your own flavor preferences. I mean, if you don't like spinach, use something else. If you don't want cilantro in it, use basil, use something else. So really, recipes are designed to use as a guideline and then put your personality into it. So here we go. Okay, in a pan on top of the stove, we're gonna heat a little bit of oil. And again, don't forget that oil gets more liquid in the pan as it heats up, so you don't need to use as much as you might think you do. Okay, so we're getting the oil heated up. We're just gonna wait a second till it gets nice and hot. And then this might seem funny, but we're gonna add the poblano peppers, the onions, and the pork together into the pan with a little bit of garlic, because it's going to all kind of cook together, and you're just gonna wait until the pork gets a little bit brown. So we have poblano peppers, which I love. When you choose poblano peppers, you never know if you're gonna get a hot one or not. They could be hot or they could be mild. So taste it first, especially if you're feeding it to your kids, because some of them have no heat at all and some of them have a lot. And they're traditionally used in chili rellenos, which is one of my favorite stuffed pepper dishes. And then we have chopped onion. And I'm gonna show you a little trick with the onion. This is what I like to do. I hate fighting with vegetables on top of my cutting board. So let me show you one of my little tricks. This little knob on the end of your onion, it's your friend. So you wanna keep that on there. So you're just gonna cut the end of the onion down, and you wanna use a really sharp knife because it's dangerous to cut with a dull knife because it can slip. A sharp knife goes right through the food and it makes it safer, believe it or not, to cook with and cut with. Go right down the center of the knob on the end, and that's when I peel it because it's so hard to peel an onion with it whole, so it's so much easier to cut it in half first and then peel it. So we're gonna take this, and it's depending on the type, the size of the dice you want. So we have diced here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through the onion about almost to the end and keeping that knob on the end. And then I'm gonna go one more time towards the top, keeping the knob on the end. See, I'm not fighting with it on top of the cutting board. And then I'm just gonna go straight down this way in the sizes that I want. And I want a pretty good sized dice. And you see, I still have it all together. And then you get the exact size that you want as you go down the onion. So that's just a nice little trick that makes it a lot easier to gather things on top of your cutting board. So we have that already in there. I'll throw in a little more. I like onions. And again, this is a sweet Vidalia onion. For me, I just use them for everything. I used to love red onions. I don't use them as much anymore. I'm just kind of hooked on Vidalia onions. Except in salsa, I like the red onion. And then we're gonna add a little bit of garlic. So let me just show you another little trick. You're gonna separate your cloves, and they're all gonna fly all over your cutting board. And then I just wanna show you another thing that I do. You peel it, which we all know, you smash it with the side of your knife. And this is just something that happened when I was cutting, because I use a lot of garlic. I'm Italian-Irish, but the Italian comes out a lot in my cooking. So here's just something that I do. I use my paring knife and I keep it in my left hand because I'm right-handed, and I put the blade up. And again, this is just to keep from getting things all messed up on your cutting board. So I kind of use my paring knife to keep everything together. So I'll cut, and then I'll scrape, and then I'll use this paring knife to keep it all together. So it works really, really well, just so you can dice and keep it all in one spot. And then you scrape it, gather it all together, and then you've got your nice minces of garlic. Now, when it comes to garlic, I think the smaller the pieces, the better in a lot of dishes, because not a lot of people want to bite into a big chunk of garlic. So as small as you can get it, I think is really best. Okay, so we have this this minced garlic, and see how it all kind of gathers together? So I'm using the paring knife as a helper. Okay, so we're gonna cook this all up. I'm surprised I'm not crying because I am so sensitive to onions. I've done everything, you know, bread in the mouth, goggles, you name it, it doesn't work for me. I'm very sensitive to onions. So this is starting to really cook up nicely, and we're gonna let that sit while, what we wanna do is make sure all the water is evaporated before we put this into the crock pot. So we get all that water from the vegetables out, and some of the water from the pork comes out. So we're gonna let that cook until the water is evaporated from it. Now, into the crock pot. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring the insert over, and we are going to add some baby spinach. This looks like a boatload of baby spinach, but this whole amount of spinach is gonna come to about a handful. So we're gonna put all this in the crock pot. And then we're gonna add chicken broth. Again, if you're using vegetables, use vegetable broth. That's totally fine. Chili powder, which I love. It's really not spicy. It just adds this really deep flavor. And then we have oregano, which is a really classic Mexican spice. And we have hominy. Hominy are dried corn kernels that have been soaked in an alkaline solution to separate that hard outer shell from the inside of the corn. And the process just is something that's so ridiculously unique. If you haven't had it before, you really need to try it. You can find it in like the canned section in the international section of the supermarket. And we're gonna add that. It's so good, I love corn. I'm like a corn freak. So we're gonna stir this all up together. So you have all of the hominy mixed with the spices. And then we're gonna add this mixture that's starting to cook completely through, but as you can see, as it's cooking through, the water is all starting to evaporate. So we need just a couple more minutes to let that cook. There's nothing like crock pot meals. I mean, you start it in the morning, you go to work, you go through your day, you get home, you have an instant dinner that's on the table, and you just throw some vegetables on the side and you are good to go. Okay, so that's perfect. Let's shut this off. Okay, so we're gonna add that to the crock pot. Oh my gosh, look at all that beautiful color too. And then that chili powder is gonna give it like a little bit of a reddish hue, but oh, the flavors are amazing. We're gonna add a little pinch of salt, and we're gonna stir in some cilantro. Again, if you don't like it, you don't have to use it. You can use something else. Parsley would be good in here too, but you have all that spinach in here. Then we're gonna set this in the crock pot. We're gonna put the lid on, and we're gonna cook it on high for 2 hours. Then we're gonna stir it up and thicken it up with a little bit of flour and some of the broth that comes from the bottom of this pot. And then we're gonna cook it again for another 2 or 3 hours on low, and you've got yourself a heck of a meal. You're gonna love it. Okay, so here's the finished soup. It is so delicious. Just garnish it with a little bit of chopped cilantro. You can also add a little bit of avocado and a squeeze of lime juice, and it is just absolutely fantastic. To freeze it, you do the exact same thing that you did with the chili. You take a container, you can do any size, can be large for, you know, like 2 or 3 people, and this is great for a single serving, even 2 people. And then you just fill it almost all the way up. Put the lid on it, stick it in your freezer, label and date it. And then when you want to defrost it, do the same thing. You run it under the water, you pop it out, you put it in a pan, and you heat it up, and you have yourself a delicious soup. It is so good. It tastes like Mexico. It's so good. Thanks for watching Fresh to Frozen and Back. I'm your host, Diane Hendricks. Please share these recipes on your social media, follow me, and visit my website, dianehendricks.com, for these recipes and more. I'll see you next time.